last year, the Premier of Victoria announced that gold would be the mineral emblem for the state of Victoria. It was announced in Ballarat and Bendigo, where we had our regional sittings, and you couldn't think of a more fitting place to make an announcement like that, which was an area, of course, that was the centre of gold in the state of Victoria in the 1850s. Shortly after, Rita Bentley, the President of the Prospectors and Miners Association, got in touch with the Parliament and said that would the Parliament be prepared to accept a full-size replica of the Welcome Stranger gold nugget. Yes, we would. We'd like you to bring the real one in. But it's interesting, just doing a little research on it, to find that it was too heavy for the scales that they had at the time, and it was actually cut into 3 pieces, which just a bit sad they'd do something like that. But then again, I suppose to kick over a bit of gold like that, nobody would ever expected that you'd have in excess of 70 pound of gold. It was just something amazing. So look, I'd like, without further ado, to introduce Rita Bentley to come up and to look after the rest of the morning. So thank you.
Welcome everyone. I too would like to acknowledge the presiding officers, Ken Smith, is the President here? Yeah, President Bruce Atkins, Premier Ted Baillieu, Michael O'Brien, the Resources Minister. I believe that Daniel Andrews, the Opposition Leader, is going to join us a bit later, but Jacinta Allen is here to represent them. We have the Loddon Shire Mayor, Jeff Curnow, invited guests and fellow prospectors. Thank you all for coming along today. For us, this is an extremely special event, and I'd like to thank the Speaker for hosting us today. I think that's a wonderful thing for you to have done for us. There is a magic about gold, particularly about gold nuggets. I've seen the Premier, he still hasn't given it back. And Victoria has, without question, the best gold nugget fields in the world. The magic of gold was demonstrated recently when the 177-ounce Ballarat nugget was found. There's a short YouTube video of this, and it hit 1 million views in a little over a week. These interest from this has been from around the world, so Victoria's goldfields are once again world famous. And it's also a fact that people travel from around the world to our goldfields to prospect for gold. There are people here who make a business out of taking tourists around the goldfields, but we largely fly under the radar as tourists. And additionally, we do have the best prospecting legislation in the country, and while I thank those present for that, I will add that we can always do better. What we haven't done until recently is celebrate the importance of our goldfield or the magic of gold. And that was until last year, when gold was adopted by the government as our state mineral emblem. And I'd like to really thank the government for taking the initiative to do that, and to the opposition for their support of that too. So we'd like to thank you all for coming. And Dean, where are you? Dean? So, sorry. As to signify that importance, and we'd like to mark the occasion by presenting the people of Victoria this replica of the 2,316-ounce Welcome Stranger nugget. Yeah. Dean is going to tell you a little bit about the history and how he made the replica. Dean is from Museum Victoria. We also have other representatives from the museum here today, but Dean will give you all the background.
Thank you. Good morning, presiding officers, Premier, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, what a piece of gold, hey? Even today, 162 years after the first Victorian gold rush, the romance and irresistible lure for gold fires the imagination. The dream of an instant fortune created an epidemic of gold fever back then, and it continues to do so today. In 1862, 2 Cornishmen, a John Deason and a Mr. Richard Oates, believed their luck would come true on the goldfields in Australia as well. They joined together and they began prospecting their selected claim at Bulldog Gully in a small town of Malagal in central Victoria. They worked their claim on and off between farming for many years. Well, the gold prospected on this claim was very rewarding for them. It also included a piece of gold about this size, 108 ounces. Then, on the morning of Friday, the 5th of February in 1869, John Deason was picking the surface around the soils of an old stringy bark tree for soil to put through their puddler, and he hit what he thought to be a large stone just below the surface. "Darn it," he said, "I wish it was a nugget and had broken the pick." Well, after 3 attempts to free the rock, he noticed a glint of gold. This was no ordinary rock. Later, he stated to the press, "I thought it was funny because we did not realise that there were large boulders on that side of the hill." Well, the pick did break, trying to raise the gold from the ground. Oates was summoned to assist raising it from its resting place with a crowbar. Excitedly yet nervous, they moved the nugget to their hut, where they put it into the fire for 10 hours. Now, apparently, the heat from the fire causes quartz to crack and making it easier to remove from the nugget. They and Deason's wife, Catherine, very pleased at this stage, I would say, spent all night chipping away at these bits of quartz. And Deason was to say in the morning, when the first light shone on this wonderful gold nugget, "Welcome, stranger." They kept the find a secret for 3 days, then decided to transport it in a cart hidden under Catherine's dress to the London Chartered Bank in Denali. After much excitement, the bank manager stated, "Our scales are too small to weigh this nugget." The nugget was placed in a wheelbarrow and it was escorted by a constable to Archie Wall's blacksmith shop, where it was dissected into 3 sections on a very large anvil, and this anvil is on display now in the streets of Denali. The mass of the nugget weighed in at 210 pounds. That's about 78 kilograms. Then the bank promptly smelted it and obtained 2,268 ounces of solid gold. Adding the smaller pieces of gold that they chipped off in the days earlier, its total weight was recorded at 2,316 ounces, and that's about 72 kilograms of gold. Quite amazing. Whilst the nugget was laying on the floor of the bank prior to dismantling, 2 sketches were made of it from a Mr. George Webber and a Mr. Francis Fern. Unfortunately, no photographs were taken of the actual nugget. So in 1872, a plaster of Paris model was made using those sketches as a reference. What you see here today is an exact replica of that original model. The replica and the moulds of it are now held safely in the Museum Victoria collections, and I, on behalf of the Prospectors and Miners Association of Victoria, would like to take this opportunity to thank the museum for allowing me to make a replica presented today from one of those moulds. Thank you. This replica has been carefully fabricated. This replica today has been carefully fabricated using modern plastics, golden powers, and finely detailed with paints to complement a museum quality finish. Now, I will close by leaving you with this thought. The next time you go to your local hardware store and you pick up a bag of concrete or compost, picture picking up 4 of those bags, and this will give you an idea of the weight of this world-famous Welcome Stranger gold nugget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to call on the Premier to respond and also acknowledge the Deputy Premier who is also here. Premier?
Thanks very much, Ken, and can I join you in acknowledging the Deputy Premier, Ministers, Jacinda Allen representing Daniel Andrews, other members of Parliament here, acknowledge Jeff Curnow, the Mayor of Loddon Shire, and Rita and her team, including Andrew Bales, and acknowledge Dean as well from Museum Victoria and Robin Hurst from the collections component of Museums Victoria. What would Victoria be without gold? Where would we be? What would this state look like without gold? Going back that 160 years ago, and think about the impact that gold has had on this state. Now, perhaps more recent generations are less aware of the story of gold, less aware of its significance. But you've only got to glance at the ceiling in here, look at the ornamentation on the cornices around the windows and the doors, walk through the Parliament and understand that gold had a huge impact, not just for the decoration, but to fund what is the extraordinary civic legacy in this state. And behind us, here is the Treasury Building, one of my favourite buildings, designed by John James Clark. And John James Clark came to this country, like so many people, as a young man, actually at the age of 14. Left the UK at the age of 14, went immediately to work in the Public Works Department here as an architect at the age of 14, and designed the Treasury Building at the age of 19. And the Treasury Building is significant to us because the vaults on the ground floor, identified by the darker stone if you look at the building from the outside, those vaults were full to the ceiling with gold. And that resource funded the civic legacy of this state. And those who had the opportunity to spend that civic legacy spent it wisely on beautiful buildings, whether it's the churches, the Parliament, the Treasury Building itself, town halls, courthouses, right across this state. The infrastructure, the roads, the bridges. It's an extraordinary legacy, and it does separate us out from other states. So we're delighted to be here to accept this replica because gold represents so much to this state and to our community. As has been said, we were pleased to be able to, with the opposition in both Houses of Parliament last year, establish gold as the state's mineral emblem. I think it was a very fitting move and a reminder of the importance of gold. And as Rita and others have said, our resource here in gold is one of the richest in the world, and it saw this state grow. The name Welcome Stranger, and as Dean describes, the utterance of the words Welcome Stranger, it is so fitting, because going back 160 years ago, that was the fundamental core character of this state. Welcoming those from all over the world, putting strangers together, working with Indigenous communities locally, blending and building a new community. And gold is absolutely the heart of it. And I'm sure there are many people in this room who can trace their own family origins back to those who came in those days seeking good fortune, and many found good fortune. The size of this is quite extraordinary. I was just saying to Peter, I'm about 110 kilos. And this started off, before it was chipped away, at about 80 kilos, which is a bit more Peter's size. But if you can imagine how those two felt, John Deason and Richard Oates, how did they feel when they basically kicked that one night out in central Victoria, and who they had to tell. It wasn't as if they could run around and tell everybody and there weren't too many people with them. But the sense of excitement must have been overwhelming, and how they contained themselves, we can only imagine. But it is a delight to have this here, this replica. It'll be a fantastic reminder. It'll also be a great reminder and a tribute to the Prospectors and Miners Association for the work that they do, representing that core character of Victoria, which is one of ambition and adventure and desire to search our state for the available resources. And I know Rita has been a very passionate and proud leader of the PMA for many years, and there are so many other members. So thank you for this gesture. We are absolutely delighted, and I'm sure this will have a very significant place in the Parliament, and it'll be a reminder to all visitors, and we'll be able to do what we so often do in this place, remind visitors of the history of this Parliament, and this will give us that extra edge so that we can say, well, this is where it came from. And particularly, that's going to apply to young people. Because, as I said, I'm not sure that younger generations quite appreciate the significance of gold, and now they'll be able to see it. And hopefully, by now, the little Nugget, oh, you've still got it on show. I thought you might have squirreled it away.
I'm waiting for you to create a distraction.
I thought you might have squirreled it away by now. Rita, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the association. Thank you to all of those involved in Dean and Museum. It is a beautiful piece. this will be a permanent reminder, and I trust everybody involved here will see it that way and enjoy it when they come in here. But very much enjoy the day, and let's look after this one.
I'd like now, if I could, and thank you very much for that, Premier, I'd like to call on Andrew Bales, who's the Vice President of the Prospectors and Miners Association of Victoria, to do some presentations. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Premier, presiding officers and distinguished guests. Thank you for being here, and the comments that the Premier make about Melbourne and the significance that gold has had in shaping this great city. And what better place? We can see it here today, and it's exactly the case. And yes, for the younger generations, I think it's very significant and important that they can see what our forebears have been through and how it's created this great city of ours. And we hope as the PMAV that we do attract those people to get involved and be part of that, because it's such an exciting pastime and hobby as well. But if I can just add to what the Premier made note of in terms of the history, and the discovery of gold in the 1850s and 60s is the most significant event in the growth and development of Victoria. It provided an enormous injection of wealth that transformed a small port settlement into the envy of the world, marvellous Melbourne. Stories of trainloads of gold coming out of the Victorian goldfields spread across the globe. And it wasn't just the sheer quantity, it was also the enormous size of nuggets being recovered, many simply being plucked from the surface. Victoria's Golden Triangle accounts for more than 90% of the largest gold nuggets ever found in the world. And the largest of them all, the Welcome Stranger. The significance of gold continues to create a positive influence and opportunity for Victoria today. Premier, we would like to thank you for recognising the importance of gold to Victoria and accepting the Miners and Prospectors Association, the Prospectors and Miners Association Victoria's offer to present the government and the state of Victoria with a replica of the largest gold nugget in the world. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to present you with a number of gold-inspired gifts, including a token. Well, there's a gold pan, the Echo, the Eureka Echo, which is the Prospectors and Miners Association's magazine. An application for a miner's right, just in case you're keen to get out there and try your own hand at it. Might even be a replica of a gold nugget in there too, just to add to the table too. So please, we hope these gifts inspire you and perhaps lead you in the direction to maybe find your own Welcome Stranger.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to a conclusion. Can I say we have a permanent glass case that the nugget will be put in, and it will be on display for everybody that comes into this Parliament of Victoria, so that people can understand a little of the history of Victoria and the importance of gold played in that history. Could I now invite you all to join us for morning tea at the back of the chamber here, and to just relax and talk to one another, and just how lucky these people were. I tell you, it's probably a little bit better than getting out with one of the little machines and getting all those bottle tops and the gun shells and all of that sort of stuff. How would you be? You'd run it over the top of that and you'd say, oh no, it must be something else, and wander off. But just fantastic. What a great history that we've got here in this wonderful state of ours. So thank you all very much for your attendance here, and join us for morning tea. Thank you.